My friend and I have been friends for a long time, but he got a wife and our friendship ended, but his wife got pregnant and I was invited to a gender party, eventually his wife threw. It all started when I showed up at Jake's gender reveal party. I had known him since high school, and he was my best friend. Of course, when he told me his wife, Laura, was pregnant, I was over the moon for him. They had been through so much together, and now they were starting a new chapter in their lives. I was excited to celebrate with them. As soon as I arrived at the house, the vibrant decorations made everything feel so festive, blue and pink balloons, streamers, and a big banner that read asterisk, "It's a boy or a girl." Asterisk in bold letters. Everyone was laughing, mingling, and enjoying the food and drinks laid out on the patio. I walked around, exchanging pleasantries, but my eyes were on Jake, who stood near the grill, talking with a group of guys. I hadn't seen him in a while, life had gotten in the way, and we'd both been busy with our own things. But this day was about reconnecting. And when I saw him, standing there with his goofy grin, I couldn't help myself. I rushed over and pulled him into a tight hug. "Jake! You're about to be a dad. I'm so freaking happy for you," I said, feeling overwhelmed by how much this moment meant. But the second I pulled away from the hug, I saw her, Laura. Her smile faltered as she stared at the two of us, her eyes narrowing. I felt an odd chill in the air, but I tried to brush it off. After all, I was just excited to see my best friend, right? Before I could say anything more, I was interrupted by a loud, sudden sound. A cake, decorated with the reveal colors, came flying through the air and splattered right into my face. The crowd went silent as I stood there, cake dripping from my hair and face. "Get away from my husband, you crazy bitch!" Laura screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. My stomach dropped. What the hell had just happened? I stood there, frozen for a moment, staring at Laura with cake dripping down my face. The party had gone eerily quiet, all eyes on me. I wiped some of the frosting from my eyes, trying to gather my thoughts, but nothing made sense. I had just hugged Jake, nothing more, nothing less. Why was Laura flipping out like this? "Laura, what the hell?" Jake's voice cut through the silence, sharp and confused. He took a step toward me, his face creased with concern, but Laura was already moving to intercept him. "No," she practically shrieked, throwing her hands up in frustration. "She's been eyeing you like she's some kind of second woman in your life, and I've had enough of it." Her voice wavered between anger and desperation. I blinked, trying to process her words. Was she really accusing me of something like that? I was just excited to see my friend after so long. "Laura, you're out of your mind," Jake said, clearly frustrated. He turned to face me, eyes wide with disbelief. "I'm sorry about this, I don't know what's going on with her. We've talked about boundaries, and boundaries." Laura interrupted, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "You want to talk about boundaries after this?" She gestured to me, her gaze full of disgust. "Maybe if you actually cared about me, you'd have hugged me first, instead of running to her like you've always done." My chest tightened. What was she talking about? Sure, I had hugged Jake first, but that was because we had been friends for years, and we were reconnecting. I hadn't meant to disrespect anyone. Before I could even open my mouth to respond, Jake stepped in front of me, blocking me from Laura's furious gaze. "This is crazy," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. "Laura, you're overreacting. It's just a hug. She's my friend, and you," but before he could finish, Laura turned and stormed off, leaving us standing there in the awkward, charged silence. Jake rubbed his temples, clearly exhausted by the scene unfolding around him. "Look, I don't know what's going on," Jake said, turning back to me. "But I swear, she's been acting like this for a while now. It's like she's imagining things that aren't there. I didn't know she'd react this way over a damn hug." I felt a pang of guilt twist inside me, even though I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. Laura had always been intense, but this was something else entirely. And now, it was ruining the party. I didn't want to be the reason for all the chaos. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was going on behind the scenes, something deeper than a simple hug. I watched Jake as he ran a hand through his hair, looking lost in thought. It wasn't like him to be so rattled, especially not by something as trivial as a hug. But there was something in his eyes, something about how he looked at me now, that made me feel like I wasn't entirely welcome anymore. It was subtle, but it was there. Maybe I had misread the situation entirely. He let out a sigh and turned to follow Laura, who had stormed off toward the back of the house. I stood there for a moment, still trying to piece together what had just happened. The other guests were awkwardly scattered around, some pretending not to notice, others whispering behind their hands. I felt like I was the center of a circus act, except I hadn't even performed. Just as I was about to head inside to clean myself up, Jake returned, his face a mixture of frustration and exhaustion. "Laura wants you gone," he said, barely meeting my gaze. My stomach churned at the words. Gone. Just like that. I had been friends with Jake for years, but now it felt like he was backing her up, even though he seemed just as confused as I was. "What do you mean, gone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the lump forming in my throat. "I didn't do anything wrong, Jake. I didn't know hugging you would cause all of this." He gave me a look that was almost apologetic, but there was still tension in his posture, like he was caught in the middle of something he didn't want to be a part of. "I don't know what's going on with her, but she's being, well, irrational. She says you've been too familiar with me for too long. And I don't know, maybe there's truth to it. I've spent a lot of time with you in the past, and I didn't really notice how much it bothered her." I felt a sharp pang of disbelief. Too familiar, was that really what this was about? All I had ever been to Jake was a friend. Sure, we had spent time together over the years, but it was always just us, hanging out like old times. No romantic feelings, no ulterior motives, just friendship. How could she have been holding on to these feelings for so long without ever saying anything? "I don't know what to say, Jake," I replied, my voice shaking a little. "I've never thought of you in any other way. You're my best friend. I would never try to come between you and Laura." Jake sighed again, rubbing his forehead. I know. But Laura, she's been struggling with a lot of things lately. And I've been trying to be there for her more. Maybe that's why she flipped out. But honestly, it doesn't make sense, and I don't know how to fix this." Before I could respond, a loud voice interrupted us from behind. "Get the hell out of here," Laura called from the door, her arms crossed, her expression cold and hard. "I'm not asking again." The harshness in her tone made it clear this wasn't just a misunderstanding. Something had snapped in her, and it wasn't just about the hug anymore. It was like she had built up this resentment for me over time and now had an outlet to release it. Jake shot me a look, the apology still there in his eyes, but it was clear he was torn between keeping the peace and trying to salvage what was left of his relationship with Laura. "I'm sorry," he muttered, shaking his head. "I'll call you later, okay?" But before I could even react, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, feeling like the outsider. I hadn't come to his party to cause trouble, but somehow, I had ended up in the middle of a storm I didn't see coming. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, cake still dripping from my hair and face, the weight of everything settling in. I wasn't sure if I was more hurt or just confused. Jake's words, his look, the way he had left me hanging, it all felt so wrong. I never wanted to be the cause of a fight between them, but here I was, feeling like I had just been kicked out of something that was once such a big part of my life. I slowly made my way to my car, the sounds of the party continuing behind me, but it felt distant, like I was walking through a fog. The hurt in Laura's eyes, the way she lashed out at me, felt personal, even though I knew it shouldn't have been. She'd always been a bit possessive, a little paranoid about my relationship with Jake, but this was next level. I reached my car and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Jake. "I'm sorry. I don't know what to do right now, but I'll talk to you soon." I stared at the screen, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. Talk to me soon. Was that all he had to say? Did he think an apology over text would fix everything? He should have stood up for me more, especially when Laura had been so out of line. But I couldn't help the flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, we could still work this out. Maybe it wasn't over. I hit the reply button, typing and deleting several times before finally sending a short message back, "I don't know if we can fix this, Jake. I never meant to cause any problems." I hit send and tossed my phone into the passenger seat. As I slid into the driver's seat, the reality of the situation set in. Laura wasn't just mad about the hug, there was more to this story that I hadn't seen. And I had no idea how deep this resentment ran, or why it was directed at me. The drive home was a blur. My mind kept replaying the scene at the party, the way Laura's face had twisted with anger, the look in Jake's eyes as he walked away. I wasn't sure if it was worth salvaging anymore. Maybe some friendships weren't meant to last, or maybe this one had run its course without me even realizing it. When I finally got home, I sat on the couch, staring at the wall, waiting for something to change, but knowing that nothing would. I had never felt so out of place in my entire life. The next few days were nothing like I expected. Jake didn't reach out again, and my messages went unanswered. I tried to keep myself busy, but the constant buzz of my phone, empty and cold, reminded me of the silence hanging between us. I felt like I was just waiting for something to break, something to change, but it didn't. It was as if I had become a ghost in my own life. Laura, on the other hand, was all over social media, posting pictures from the party with big smiles, the two of them acting like everything was perfectly fine. But I knew it wasn't. I knew things had shifted, and not just because of the cake incident. It was hard to ignore the gnawing feeling in my gut, the feeling that there was more to the story than just a silly hug. It didn't make sense. Laura had never been this aggressive before. She'd always been territorial, but this was different. The way she had thrown the cake, the rage in her eyes, it felt rehearsed, like she was lashing out at something much deeper than just jealousy. I scrolled through my phone, contemplating whether I should reach out to Jake. But every time I started typing, I hesitated. What would I say? "I'm sorry for hugging you." No, that didn't feel right. "Hey, I miss you, let's fix this." It felt hollow. I wasn't the one who had done something wrong here, yet I was the one left standing with nothing but questions. The silence from both of them was deafening. A few days later, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I couldn't keep sitting here, hoping for something that wasn't coming. I needed to understand why Laura had exploded like she did. There had to be a reason. And if Jake wouldn't talk to me, then I'd go to the source. I called Laura. The phone rang a few times before she picked up, her voice colder than I remembered. "What do you want?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. "I want to understand why you did what you did at the party, Laura. Why are you acting like this?" There was a long pause, and I could hear her breathing on the other end. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, but still sharp. "You don't get it, do you? You never have." I was taken aback. "What do you mean?" "I'm just trying to figure out what happened. Why was it such a big deal that I hugged Jake?" Her laugh was short and bitter. "It wasn't about the hug, you naive idiot. It was about everything leading up to it. The way you've been in his life for so long, always at the center of it. You're too close to him. Always have been, always will be. And I'm tired of it." My heart sank. The resentment was so much deeper than I had realized. "Laura, I don't want to take Jake from you. He's my friend, he's always been my friend. That's all. I don't know what you think has been going on, but I swear to you, I've never thought of him in any way other than that. Her voice softened, but only slightly. You don't get it. It's never been about you wanting him. It's about me losing him. Slowly but surely, every time you show up, it feels like he's slipping further away from me. I felt a pang of guilt, but I wasn't sure if it was warranted. I never meant to make you feel that way. I don't want to ruin your marriage. But you need to understand that Jake is his own person. He can make his own choices. I'm not trying to replace you or take his attention away. Laura was quiet for a moment before she sighed heavily. I'm not the crazy one here, you know. He is the one who doesn't see it. And if you don't realize how deep this goes, then you're just as blind as he is. I didn't know what else to say. My mind was spinning, but before I could ask her more questions, she cut me off. I've said enough. Don't bother calling again. The line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long time after the call ended, trying to make sense of Laura's words. I'm not the crazy one here. The sentence echoed in my mind, a mix of hurt and frustration. She'd painted me as the villain in a story I didn't even know I was a part of. It wasn't just about a hug. It was about something deeper, something that had been festering for a long time, and I was just the unfortunate person caught in the middle. I tossed my phone onto the couch and leaned back, my thoughts a tangled mess. It seemed like Laura had been carrying this resentment for a while, but I couldn't understand why it was directed at me. I hadn't done anything wrong. Sure, I had spent time with Jake in the past, but it was always innocent. A few hangouts, a few laughs, nothing more. I never even considered that it might have been affecting their marriage. I didn't want to be the cause of their problems, but at the same time, it felt like I was being pushed out of Jake's life without even knowing why. Was he really so blind to what was going on? Was he willing to let me go just because Laura was uncomfortable with my presence? The more I thought about it, the more the guilt started to creep in. Maybe I had been too close to Jake. Maybe I had never noticed how things were shifting between them, or how Laura felt like she was losing him to someone who wasn't even trying to take his place. But I still couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. There was more to this story than just jealousy. And if Laura thought that throwing cake at me or accusing me of something that wasn't true would fix things, she was sorely mistaken. I tried reaching out to Jake one more time. I needed to hear his side, to know if he truly understood what was going on. I wasn't sure if he'd reply, but the silence was killing me. I missed my friend. Jake, please. I need to talk. This whole situation doesn't make sense to me, and I don't want to lose you. Let's clear the air. Please. I hit send, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd finally take a stand and reach out. But the hours passed, and nothing. The silence was deafening. I kept thinking about what Laura had said, how I was blind to what was happening. Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been blind, but I had never meant to hurt anyone. I needed to know where Jake stood. I needed to know if he cared enough to fight for our friendship, or if I was just another casualty in the war that Laura seemed to be waging. The days dragged on, each one feeling heavier than the last. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was a message from Jake, but it never was. The silence was suffocating, and I found myself questioning everything, the friendship, the relationship with Laura, and even my own worth. Was I really the cause of all this? Or was this just a dramatic overreaction from Laura? I spent most of my time replaying the events in my mind, trying to figure out where things had gone so wrong. That hug, why had it caused such an explosion? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that it wasn't just that one moment. It was a culmination of all the little things, all the times I had been there for Jake, when she felt like she wasn't. But that didn't explain the rage, the violence in her eyes when she threw the cake. It didn't explain why I had been so easily discarded. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to find them by sitting around waiting for Jake to decide whether or not to contact me. So, I did what anyone who had been pushed to the edge would do. I showed up at their house. I knew it was risky, that it could make things worse, but at that point, I didn't care. I couldn't keep pretending like nothing was wrong. I needed closure, needed to see if there was even a shred of the friendship left between me and Jake. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding in my chest. I half expected Laura to answer and slam the door in my face, but when Jake appeared, I felt a wave of relief mixed with apprehension. He looked tired, like he hadn't been sleeping much. His eyes were dull, like he was still trying to make sense of everything that had happened. "Daria," he said softly, his voice almost apologetic. But there was something else in his eyes, something that looked like uncertainty. "I didn't think you'd come." "Neither did I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "But I need to talk. We need to talk. You've been avoiding me, and I can't keep pretending like I don't care." Jake stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. The house was quiet, unnervingly so. It felt empty, like everything had been stripped away, leaving nothing but tension. I followed him into the living room, where we both sat down, but there was no comfort to be found here. The space between us felt insurmountable. "Look," he began, running a hand through his hair, "I know I've been distant. But I don't know what to say. I can't be caught in the middle of all this. Laura's upset, and I get it, but I can't fix everything for you." I frowned. "You think I want you to fix it? I don't need you to choose sides, Jake. I just want to understand what's going on. What's really happening here? Is this really about me hugging you, or is there more to it?" He hesitated, his eyes flickering to the floor before meeting mine again. "It's not just the hug, Daria. It's everything. I don't even know where to start. I thought you knew Laura, but I guess I was wrong. She's been struggling for a while. She feels threatened. Not by you, exactly, but by the way you've been so present in my life. She's always felt like you had this hold on me." I blinked, stunned by the admission. "A hold on you? That's what this is about?" Jake looked frustrated, like he didn't have the words to explain it properly. "I don't know how to make her understand. She's been really stressed about a lot of things, and I think I've been neglecting her without realizing it. And I don't know how to make it better." I let his words sink in. "So, this isn't about me at all. This is about her insecurities." Jake's eyes softened, but he still looked conflicted. "I guess so. But it's hard, Daria. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to lose her. I'm stuck." A lump formed in my throat, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had never wanted to be a wedge between them, but I had never imagined things would get this twisted either. It wasn't about a hug. It was about a relationship breaking down from the inside out, and I was just the collateral damage. I stood up, my resolve hardening. "I understand, Jake. But I can't keep being caught in the middle of this. I don't want to be the reason your marriage falls apart, and I don't want to be the reason we lose our friendship. So, I'm stepping away. I need space. From both of you." Jake looked pained, but he didn't stop me. "I don't want you to go, Daria. But I get it. I just wish things didn't have to be this way." And with that, I left, my heart heavy but at least with some clarity. I didn't know what the future held for me and Jake, or for Laura and him, but one thing was certain, I wasn't going to keep sacrificing my peace for a friendship that had been twisted beyond recognition.